We should be going live now.
Awesome. Welcome
Awesome
back to
sauce.
part three.
Part three. This army's so big, it needs three parts. It really does. We're not really sure what's
Yep.
going on there, but I think it's the KGB, because the Soviet faction wants to be looked at next, and we are here reviewing Wehrmacht. I'm not happy with the facts. So we're starting to build second building. This is the second building for the Wehrmacht, and this is an interesting building. Nothing. If you look at it, you don't think too many things have changed. But if you actually really start now analyzing it, which we will, you're going to realize, oh my word, a lot has changed this faction. First
Mhm.
off, is the group of soldiers I was talking about that I think are some of the strongest units in the game, which is the Panzer Grenadiers. First edition, they weren't that good in the first edition. They had 2 range, 1 infantry damage. For an experience point, you get a defense dice, and then for 3 munition, you can get an AP, and then for another 3, you can get another AP.
Mhm.
Here in the second edition, it's like they buffed it with a ton of steroids. Again, 5 health, and it gets an instant 1 range upgrade. Sign me up.
Mhm.
You just made this unit 33% more deadlier. Okay? Next thing, off the bat, you're going to notice it gets an armor piercing round. Sign me up. You just made it 50% more dangerous for infantry and 100% more dangerous against tanks and 100% more dangerous against light vehicles. And even crazier, it also gets a wrench. Guys,
Yep.
what are we doing here? Why do I not see this faction on the board more often? I don't know. Now, if you thought that was the end of it, it's not. Let's continue on with this. The one thing
Yeah.
that I really liked from the first edition was it had defense dice. And in this edition, they kept it. All this means is, yes, theoretically it's 5 health, but if you're fighting against infantries that are doing 1 damage, maybe 2, you have up to 10, potential health, as long as you keep avoiding the damages. It's an amazing unit. An amazing unit.
Mhm.
I mean, why did you juice this bad boy up so much? I mean, nothing about this unit got worse. Not one thing I can think of. Price
Right.
the same,
Mhm.
2 more bonuses, 1 extra range. Why all the juicing?
Well, it needed juice. It had none. It had literally zero juice in first edition. It was probably the most unit received the feedback we received the most. There we go. So basically, in first edition, it didn't really excel at a particular role, especially for its cost.
Mm-hmm.
So Wehrmacht overall, one thing to kind of note is that their manpower costs, kind of when you total them up, they are very manpower dependent. They have kind of the one of the highest, if not the highest, total manpower cost. So when you start to break it down, when you get that unit out, you kind of need a lot out of it. So the big thing that you're able to get now, arguably the biggest one, is the wrench. I mean, that's kind of, you might think, especially new players or returning back, they might think that's the least important out of all these different changes, but it's actually in a lot of ways the strongest one,
The
because they
strongest.
could,
Yep.
in that they can build sandbags. So kind of what you already said, and then on top of that, you combo it still with the defense die, and again, kind of, you can, that stacks with sandbags, right? So that stacks with buildings. So these units are just so flexible, and then we also obviously have the AP damage. So out of the gate, the unit can kind of do well against light vehicles, and then if you upgrade it, can kind of do well into heavy vehicles. So that's kind of the role. So the problem is, for Wehrmacht's faction, this unit kind of is in this strange spot where it has to be overloaded to achieve the necessary goals for Wehrmacht. So Wehrmacht kind of, I mean, it doesn't have an AT gun in its core kit, right? So this unit's got to be able to go that way, plus the health and wrench and defense die allows it to kind of be a very unique unit for this faction, kind of like Slava already stated, that it's kind of that brute workhorse unit. If you invest in it, it'll pay dividends. Do you still need to get it in the right spot? Of course. Does it have a speed out of the gate? No. So like, you really got to make sure it gets in the right spot, and that's kind of why we ended up with the 3 range, is because it was still hard to use, especially against vehicles. Having 2 range, being that faction's anti-tank gun with 2 range when all second edition anti-tank guns now have 4, it's kind of a tough sell in a lot of ways to fulfill that role, even
Mm-hmm.
though it kind of needed to. So the core model again in second edition is really that a unit needs to fulfill one role out of the gate. So this unit just really is that tank. It's a great unit to go capture. It's a great unit that's just good against a lot of different things out of the gate, right? So that's kind of where it shines. It's that ultra tanky, ultra kind of flexible unit that you just get so much out of. And then obviously it has that path to also be this faction's anti-tank gun, which total resources is 11, right? I mean, it's 533, so
Mm-hmm.
it costs 11 total resources to get it to that point. But at that point, this thing is just a menace on the battlefield. So you kind of get now what you invest in it, especially at that high cost compared to any other unit.
Right,
So
and even and if you just compare just right here, Panzer Grenadiers versus the Grenadiers for one more manpower, you already get a bonus range and a sight and a health just by one more manpower. I am amazed that I don't see this unit more often. And when I'm playing second edition, if I'm playing the Wehrmacht, I mean, this is what I go for if every time. It just makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't want to. I mean, it's almost, and this is where a lot of people disagree with me, but I actually prefer this over the 222. The 222, yes, it's mobile, but remember, you can put the Panzer Grenadiers in a Kuba wagon. Now you got a tank hunting Kuba wagon. I mean, if you just drop them off, it's insane. And not seeing it being
for
played,
sure,
I think the big reason why is because, yeah, you have to have 5 manpower upfront cost,
right?
which
Exactly,
means
yeah.
round 2, you probably shouldn't be purchasing any kind of other infantry units. Maybe even maybe even avoid the Kuba wagon round 2, and then round 3, pick it up with the Kuba wagon to run out. Super nasty unit.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what you're looking to do. And I understand, like, you might have the mentality of, hey, do I just get this guy every game? And, I can't really necessarily argue against that, right? 'Cause so, like, the core of each faction in second edition is that each unit has to fulfill a role. So like that is clearly defined now. And then, but you have plenty of other options. So like the 222 also, as we get to soon, it kind of covers all the different, bases as we kind of alluded to. And then the mortar team, I think we're probably ready to go to the mortar team now. The mortar
Yes.
team now, yeah, its upgrades were flopped. So that's part of kind of a thing that you're going to start to see where we want to split where all the damage is. Because look at first edition, all the damage upgrades for tier 2 were munition upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
So that swap is really ingrained in that whole system of where in a tier we want there to be a good choices for munitions and good choices for experience.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that. That's really all. There's not really too much to add there. It is a couple of things. Obviously, all mortar teams now have 5 range, and then obviously the bigger thing is, yeah, I mean, kind of the biggest thing in some ways is that it went from 4 manpower to 3. So it's the Wehrmacht's option for a 3 manpower infantry. It can get a dirt cheap speed die, so it's just a good flexible unit, and it kind of plays that natural way for a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that you already have your grenadiers out at the beginning of the game, charging across the board. Very easy to then just get a mortar to kind of support them.
Yeah.
So like the Soviets and the U.S. have to kind of get their mortar either the first round or later on. They're like, do I still want to get a mortar?
Yeah.
It's tough where this one's a little just more natural, if that makes sense, because you typically want these guys in the back where you can just take advantage of their range.
Yeah, and that's what
So
I see. I see that
yeah.
often on tier 2. A lot of players go for the mortar instead of the Panzer Grenadiers. You'll see the mortars come out in tier 2 a
Mhm.
lot more often for the price. Another thing is, you did reduce the munition cost. It was used to be 5 for the flame, now it's 2 experience point, like you mentioned, but it's only now 2 munitions for speed dice. And speed dice on any, as you play the game, you realize speed dice are so important for support units, especially placement units, because that allows you to continuously move with them across the board.
Mhm.
Now, and here's where it gets interesting. And if you actually look at tier 1, oops, that's the Americans. Let me find the Wehrmacht tier 1. I don't know where it went, but whatever, we'll get to it later. Where did it go to? Interesting. It flew away.
Well, we have another one over here.
Great. Yeah. And this is where it's super interesting. I love the experience cost because you have to either pay 2 experience costs, and remember, you can get this guy out in round. I think you can actually get him out in round 2. But then in
Yeah, at
round
the end of
3,
round 1 into round 2.
yeah,
Yeah, you
in
get
the
them.
round 3, it's like, and here is where I love the balancing and the thought process because, like, man, a flame on a mortar team, that's a special damage. That's insanely strong. That's you're pretty much nobody's in buildings. They're guaranteed a damage. Or do you go invisible? I do like that mortar team having this option, and
Yeah.
it's a good option. You don't have the splash like the Americans, but you have guaranteed damage every time. And this is not against just infantry in buildings, but it's also against light vehicles. And people need to remember that. This is a great light vehicle hunter, which makes
It
it weird to
is.
sound. It's guaranteed 1 damage on any light vehicle as well.
Yeah, I mean that all just it just you kind of just did my job for, to be honest. You kind of just fully fledged it all out. And like the last point that I had was that yeah, this is the only mortar that doesn't have splash, but it fulfills its role. It has basically that definitive deterministic flame die option, which the other ones don't. And sometimes you get this unit just so you can get that flame from 5 range because it is just that critical thing where hey, I already damaged a light vehicle, it's down to 1 health. Now I just get a mortar out with a flame, and I don't have to chase it down. That
Correct.
light vehicle, as long as I can keep eyes on it, it's done. Like it's. So that flame just comes in so handy, and this kind of just really focuses on that capability. So
Hmm.
it's just a nice unit to have, especially at that 3 manpower. It kind of keeps it in check, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So it's a great bang for your buck, but it doesn't have splash, and so like if this had splash, I could see that this might be the one unit in the game that is spammed if it had splash, just because it's so dirt cheap.
Yeah.
But like how many? If you had 7 manpower to start the game, how many Wehrmachts would open up with 2 mortars to be able to get double splash?
Hmm.
It would be quite consistent, I think. So just this unit, it just found its great spot, I think, in the game.
Yeah. Another thing is I do like the symbols. It cannot deploy in transports and it cannot enter buildings. A lot of people do forget that. Just a reminder, if you're just watching this faction for the first time, this is what this building means. In the first edition, some questions were, can mortars get in buildings? Here, it's very clear. Another question used to be, can they deploy? And once again, I love that clarity there on the board. It's got the space added in. In the first edition, just an empty spot. Very clean. I like that. Just clarity across the board. Okay, next one is again one thing that is insane, and you will see this unit if you're playing against Wehrmacht. You get ready to. You will almost. I don't think there was a game I played where a Wehrmacht unit did not bring out a 2-2-2.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that very thing. It's because Wehrmacht was kind of forced to go the 2-2-2 in first edition.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it really just came in where it was this very, very flexible unit, didn't really excel at any role, but yet it was kind of forced because, again, a lot of it was due to the Panzer Grenadier not really performing well.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the flame for the first edition for the mortar was 5, munitions. So how do you make this whole package work? It was just kind of a tough sell. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of an odd spot, and then light vehicles fall off hard. So that's kind of where just obviously coming to second edition, that light vehicles, the tier 2 light vehicles falling off hard. That's kind of again we touched on already that speed, the 3 range. So
Yep.
that 3 range can allow it to late game just kind of be a supportive role. And then the double speed die, like we already touched on, just kind of it doesn't. It's kind of allowed again on this unit for the same reason is that it doesn't excel at any one thing better than any other unit in the slot. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gets to have more of this cool niche role where it just has super mobility and just get around the board. Because I mean that was kind of the role of it in the video game Commanders 2, is
Yep.
that this unit was just so mobile. It was like one of the fastest. You can get it before everyone else. It was cheaper. Obviously, we have the cost standardized in the board game, but it was like cheaper and really fast and mobile. It didn't really do anything great, but that's kind of what we were able to focus on here. Just focus on that speed, and then yeah, I mean it kind of get 2 AI and 1 AP, but it's not as clean as say the Greyhound that can get 2 AI and HE, which really just is an infantry you know
Yep.
threat right out of the gate, even without the HE. It already has 2 AI, so it's just a different unit with a different role, and then it has a nice ore option to get a defense die. So you can actually get 2 speed dice and a defense die, which is like it sounds weird, right? But then you actually play it, and it's a pretty fun role because it kind of can be that insanely mobile spotter for you mid to
Yes.
late game. Just you just gotta avoid the heavy tanks, avoid their AP, and it just kind of can harass or just help threaten whatever you need to. So
Yeah.
it just can always be there, especially if you keep it centered on the battlefield. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to send them out wide because of that mobility, but then they can't capture. So that's kind of, I don't want to say that's the biggest mistake with them,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't really excel too much on its own. So like
Right.
sending it out on its own, like wide against something, it's probably not going to do well into it. Yeah, it might beat a Greyhound, but other than that, it's going to take a while to beat it generally. And yeah, I mean, it's just a better support vehicle. Like it just helps
Yes.
in other ways, and that's really how it's designed to be used. Is just help get that focus fire damage. It can help against tanks. It can help against infantry. That's kind of where it excels, right? It can help, a little bit more against infantry if you get that upgrade. So
Yeah.
it's really it's somewhat easier to use, but then it's kind of harder to use well because its role isn't that blatantly obvious, if that
Correct.
makes sense.
Yeah, and what's super interesting is I love this. I love the defense dice on here. In the first edition, like I said, at 2 range, now it's 3. That was one change, and then a speed dice to defense dice, and you moved over this side where now it's a defense dice or an infantry damage.
Hmm.
And I mean, for me, if I'm gonna play it, I think I would normally go for the defense dice because the idea is harassment of this thing. It's got 3 range, so a lot of tier 1 units you could be able to harass. And unless they have armor piercing damage, you can still go toe to toe with them, hoping your AP goes through. Putting 2 armor piercing on it, I understand you're gonna do more damage, but you're less likely to have a longer lifespan on the battlefield.
Hmm.
But great unit, really good unit. You're gonna see it even in the second edition. You're gonna see it quite often actually. In our 2v2, I saw it, and I think even in the even was it the quarterfinals or semifinals? You've seen it there too. The 2v2, the 2-2 is, I think it's in a really good spot. Like Brian said, it's not the best at anything, but it's not the worst either. And it can move around. The mobility is one of its great strengths, and
Right.
take advantage of that. I mean, if you're not taking advantage of its mobility, I don't think you're taking advantage of the full unit. It's one of the few light vehicles that can just go from like here to here, and then back to here, and then back to here, kind of just
Hmm.
jumping around.
Right.
Love it. Any more comments about the tier 2 before we get into the big boys, the bad boys?
Nah, I mean, I think we're given like these very detailed of the units. I mean, and it's kind of needed with Wehrmacht. I mean, the other factions are a little bit more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think people struggle with the Wehrmacht is, I think on paper, a lot of experienced people think Wehrmacht is the strongest, even though they're a beginner faction.
Mm-hmm.
In that their units are just so versatile that you kind of just happen to have the answer a lot of times already on the battlefield. It's just how do you use it? Where yeah, their units also have a lot of ceiling there, kind of like we already touched on. Just are you using your units the right way? So you kind of see that versus the first 2 tiers, where the tier 3 is now a little bit more obvious what the unit's role is.
Mm-hmm.
So their tier 3 is just kind of a little bit more clear. Hey, what's my problem? Okay, yeah, well, I'll just go this.
Yeah. And man, let's start with the first one, the Flakpanzer Ostwind. First
So
edition, 3
yeah,
health,
go ahead.
same range, same infantry damage. And the changes come in the second edition. You did add a speed dice. Also, the bottom changes. Experience points in the first edition was a speed dice, but now it's standard in second edition, and you allowed to have a 4th armor piercing damage. I'm sorry, not armor piercing, infantry damage. And then on the other side, which is just humongous, you got rid of the 4th armor damage there, and you added +2 sight on the second edition and the ability to spot camo. Now, here's the thing. This was just recently added,
Mhm.
Brian, because if people were watching the
Yeah,
semifinals or the 2v2s, this
it
wasn't
wasn't
there
there.
at all.
Mhm.
And you did swap the manpower, adding 1 manpower, but reducing the fuel by 50%. It's a huge
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah,
Explain.
so yeah, there's just a lot to unpack there. I think first we want to start with the fact that the obvious immediate thing is, oh, what changes this week, right? So that's kind of what stands out. And so what we're looking at, there was just a lot of feedback where we kind of had Wehrmacht. It's in a very balanced spot even before the change. where the faction's design was like, hey, if someone's got a camouflage unit, just use your Panzer Grenadier to face check it and spot it by getting adjacent. That was kind of how the faction was designed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it was balanced. But we kind of had this one unit that, even with all these changes, we weren't really seeing it excel and see use. Like, a lot of people were working around not using this unit, and we really wanted to help focus it. And then also, yeah, I mean, this could be that answer too, just so that like it helps out beginner players in a lot of ways. That, hey, if I'm running into a camouflage unit, what can I do? And it also helps with synergy. So having the two spotting, even though it doesn't help itself at all because it's still at 2 range, it kind of becomes your kind of central command tank, if you will, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
In that, a lot of your other units, especially as your other tier 3 units here, they have longer range than they do sight, so it kind of, allows it to be combined more with other units. So now going on the rest, yeah, I mean, so the next biggest thing, or arguably the bigger thing, is, so yeah, to do that recent change, we just had to give it the speed die up there, which now it really just opens up options. It's so much bang for your buck to rush tier 3 as Wehrmacht and get one of these guys out. Like, at this point, there's really nothing else we could do to this to incentivize that option more. This is it's just an infantry slaughtering machine
Mm-hmm.
out of the gate. And then, yeah, that cost looking real good. Comment from the, chat there. It is insane. Yeah, so the goal in second edition, this faction just shows it the best. It really is just the best. So you can just look at the cost in first edition. It was 2.4, 2.5, 2.5, right? So every unit, you didn't really have a choice, right? You either could afford one or you couldn't, and that was it.
Yep.
So you couldn't really plan your economy around making decisions other than I either get one or I don't. And that's how
Correct.
it was, because everything costs the same. So there was don't get me wrong, there's a choice, but it was singular in that you either could afford one or not, and then you just picked one of the three. So now with these different costs, we're able to shift things around where now, hey, what if I have 3 manpower left over but only 4 fuel? Oh, I can get a Panzer IV. So just things like that, where before you needed 5 fuel. So again, that's part of another thing that we saw in first edition was, for the German factions, just those fuel costs piling up. So yeah, tier 3 costs 1 less fuel, and then you'll see that the Panzer IV, kind of that main battle tank, it is the main battle tank for Wehrmacht. So if you don't know what to go the Panzer IV. That's
Yes.
really the
Yes.
design of
Yes.
every faction, and that's equally true here. We'll get more to the Panzer IV in a second, but just to finish it with the Flakpanzer, is that, yeah, so now it has that, now it can be that command vehicle. It is that infantry terror, and now with that 2 fuel, 3 manpower, yeah, it's like just kind of a cheaper version of the Panzer IV, but no, it's clear, right? It's anti-infantry, where the Panzer IV is that well-rounded battle tank.
Mm-hmm.
So their roles are just very clear. What do I want? And only at 3 red health, it's very easy to knock out, right?
Correct.
So it's just kind of that sweet balance where it's like an offensive monster, but is very easy to just, once you get any AP damage, you can just boom, it's off the
I
board.
mean, just let me show you something real quick. Look at this. It is the same cost as a 222.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, so again, that's actually a perfect thing to bring up here, is because you kind of look at these 2 units and you're like, why would I get a 222? But they're just different roles.
Correct.
It's so interesting that you kind of look at these numbers and you're like, okay, one's this, one's red, one's yellow. The 222 can get 2 AI, this can get 4 AI.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually start to look at the differences, and yeah, that extra speed die when you get it in the game, the fact that it's got 3 range, so like 3 range and 2 speed dice means it has like an 8 hex range in a given turn.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Flakpanzer with the speed die, right, you can go 4 and attack 2, so it's only got a 6. So again, just that threat radius, if you will, it's
Yes.
kind of a concept to kind of understand when you're learning this game, is where can a unit put pressure on in a given turn. It's just a much less unit, so it really helps show that each unit has their own role there.
Yeah. And what I love about the Flakpanzer is, don't put all your money into these units, because the one thing I noticed about the Flakpanzer is it has absolutely no response to any kind of tank unit. It's like
Mhm.
everything pings off of it. And do you want to kind of explain what's the reason behind the two extra sight? I mean, this is something new. I mean, I think anybody watching this actually,
Mhm.
this is pretty much, unless you're like one of 6 people in the universe, this is the first time that majority of the world's actually seen this edition.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, this was just this week, so this part really was just down to kind of like we touched on a little bit. This is this faction's option. If you're having trouble with snipers or any other camouflage unit, this is an option for you, right? So camouflage units, except for the Kettenkrad, the rest of them in the game are all infantry. So that this kind of just is that you would expect it to do that role, right? But yeah, this kind of allows it. Yeah, it'll spot out to 4 camo, but for itself, it only spots it technically 2, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
a sniper is 2 hexes away, but it'll help overall your other units to be able to hunt down a sniper. So if someone's massing snipers, like getting 3 snipers or something crazy, even 2, you might want to get one of these, especially if you're rushing it. It's kind of a great option. If I see someone get 2 snipers at the end of round 1, I'm gonna be like, as Wehrmacht, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm probably gonna get out a Flakpanzer
Mm-hmm.
now, and it's kind of the appropriate solution where before did it really do that role? It was kind of hard to. Like, yeah, it had a speed die upgrade, but at 2 range, it was really hard to always get it right where you needed it to do that, to do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now it's just kind of like I said, that kind of that command vehicle role. So
Yep. And I like it. I really do because it's death. This is the death for infantry but it does have some cons to play with.
mhm.
Man, it's super interesting. I do see these come out more often. Now, if this change, I want to see if they're going to come out even more or if people are going to steer away from them. Yeah, so that's interesting to see what's going to happen there. Panther 4. We're going to go quickly through the changes. In the first edition, 5 health, you reduced the health by 1. Range
Mhm.
was 2. You increased its range by 1. Armor piercing is the same. Infantry damage is the same. Cost, manpower went up 1, and fuel went down 1. So there's a little flip flop there.
Mhm.
But you did also remove, in the first edition, you had speed dice. You got rid of that, making it a slower tank. But you did, for 2 experience points now, did add defense dice. And I can
Mhm.
already see where that's going, walking through this. And the last one, you reduced the anti-infantry cost by half from 4 to 2.
Mhm.
Very interesting. One thing I do love is this here. In the first edition, the big complaint with the Panther 4 was it had what it needed, but it didn't have enough of what it needed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a lot of first edition. The problem wasn't the Panzer IV. It was more of the faction identity weakness of not really having a tank destroyer.
Yes.
So not only so you look back at just think back at the Panzer Grenadier, it wasn't that didn't really excel at it. It started with 0 AP, could only get up to 2, and the Panzer IV could had 2 and couldn't get any higher. So they were always looking for their commanders. As we're going to go through their commanders, you're going to see that all of their commanders are better against tanks. Like almost all of them have like a Tiger or something that's better against vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So the Panzer IV is now in a spot where you don't have to go those commanders. Like you can take advantage of that 3 range. The cost that it is 3 manpower and lower in fuel compared to those heavier cost vehicles, you're able to get 2 of these out in a game, very often. And it is very rewarding to do so because they can focus fire, they can kind of support each other, and then now with the Flakpanzer change, if that's spotting for it, again, this can take advantage of it. So just all around, it really helps get it in a great spot. The speed die change, really with the speed die, basically it's helped to make them all feel different, right? We kind of touched on it with the Sherman, but we
Mm-hmm.
see it here, right? This was just so close to a Sherman. It was just a 1 health more Sherman. That was it from first edition. So like that's not how does that play any different? It didn't. It was just had 1 more health. It was just harder to take out. That was it. So now we see how the Sherman, yeah, you start to see the standard, what I like to call the medium tank standard, where if it has 3 range, typically it has only frontal AI, and then when it has 2 range, it basically turreted AI, as we kind of see with the Sherman as he's bringing it on
Yeah,
the
just
edge of the
really
screen there.
quickly, yeah.
So that's kind of the standard, and the Sherman was more thematically. It did typically have the 50 cal. The US just threw 50 cals on the top of their turrets, basically on the top of their tanks. Just So that's kind of what they did. So just the Wehrmacht allows it to have a role. It's the main battle tank. And then the big thing that I kind of want to touch on now before I forget is again, you start to see that again in first edition, all the damage upgrades were on the munition side, and now they're more balanced out, right?
Hmm.
So you can kind of start to see that that helps the faction when you're playing it. You kind of get these choices where, oh, I have munitions, so maybe I should go this because I need this upgrade, or I need damage. So if I can get, if I don't have any experience and I have to choose between the Flakpanzer and the Panzer IV, and I'm fighting infantry, maybe I go the Panzer IV because hey, I have easily two munitions a lot of the time, so now I can get two AI, right?
Hmm.
And the Flakpanzer really at that 3 AI isn't that much better. It's hard to say a lot of time, but now I can
Hmm.
get to 4 AI, but again, only if I have the XP. So and then the inverse happens sometimes where I have to spend my munitions elsewhere. So it just helps give you that differentiation again with the cost, and not only the cost, but the munitions and the XP. So just every aspect of the game as you're playing the game, you get all these constant, interesting decisions each and every step of the way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the Panther 4 changes. I mean, I'm not as big of a fan of the flag, but the Panther 4 are much needed. Are much needed. The one thing early on, first edition, all you first edition backers, the Wehrmacht's anti-tank defenses were all based on the Panzer Grenadier. And here, because of just the weakness of the range here, and now it's been much more better tuned and balanced. I love it. The
Mhm.
Panzer 4 is my go-to tank for the Wehrmacht. If I'm playing the Wehrmacht and I have to bring a tank out, I will almost always choose a Panzer IV over anything else. It just makes sense. It's not a strong anti-infantry, but it does have armor piercing, and
Mhm.
it does, and now the range. It still allows me to harass, but then also go toe to toe with a Sherman or any other, I mean, medium heavy tanks. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying by medium heavy? And people, I feel weird saying that, but red
Yeah,
health
it's a
tanks,
medium heavy tank.
yeah,
Yeah.
medium heavy tank compared to like an elephant where they're just straight monster tanks. Love it.
Yep.
And this is great. I like how you did reduce the health by one, but you did have the option, hey, put a spend 2 experience points and get that armor dice, which will allow you to on frontal armor roll 3 defense dice. So you
Right.
can actually really start putting a fight against like a what is it, the Wolverine? Is that what it's called? Where it's doing three, it can do up to three
Mhm.
armor piercing damage. You can actually go
Exactly. Yep.
toe to toe fit in some ways, getting the extra defense dice, which the Wolverine doesn't get. So you're actually having that a really nice balancing act there. But I think the Wolverine's only advantage is it has full range. But that's the Americans, and if you want to see that, that was discussed a little earlier. Now here is where it gets, how do I say it, hecka crazy for the Storm
Mhm.
Panzer. 6 health, that stayed the same. Range stayed the same. In the first edition, had 3 HE damage. You removed it. You removed it a second edition. You only have a 2 now. But you did give it a defense dice off the bat,
Mhm.
which is like, talk about a heavy tank. You got one here. Slow
Mhm.
stayed. Cost did not change, which is very interesting. No need to change that. But here is where, man, look at this. First off, for 1 experience point, you can either get another HE dice or add splash to this thing.
Mhm.
Hold it. That automatically means it can actually have 4 range if it has splash, as long as somebody has sight for it. And then you took it one level further, giving it
Exactly. One level further. That's where the fun really comes out. Whenever I hear the expression, I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I see the downsides. It is frontal facing arc, so
Mhm.
you can't shoot 360. It's
Exactly.
slow, so I do see
Mhm.
why you did put this on to a lot. Even though it's slow, it's coming out. Once it's
Mhm.
out, you can't avoid it anymore.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
what's really interesting is I do love this. Hey, either get splash or add another HE. Increase your
Right.
chances of doing damage or get splash, and but you have a lesser chance of doing damage across the board.
Mhm.
Love that like counterplay. Which do I go with? Which is better for the scenario?
Yeah. So we can start with the cost, not touching, not saying the same, or it is saying the same. But yeah, it kind of just reiterates that earlier point where AI vehicles, high manpower, low fuel, but main battle tanks, more balanced stats. And then obviously the HE kind of has that new low manpower, high fuel. This one already had that. Don't see a change. So that's that. So then obviously unpacking it, yeah, at first glance you're like, oh, is this weaker? I don't know, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then so this unit, how this unit can be used now is you could just mindlessly send it across the battlefield. It's not gonna die. I mean, it takes so much effort that the opponent, if they focus this guy, they're probably losing so much elsewhere on the board to your units, right?
Correct.
So like your other units are just gonna be running amok, getting whatever they need to on the battlefield done. So this guy is just it's just kind of cool because it's a support tank role where like normally your mortar you want to keep in the back where hey if I really need to push things and if I want to send something out front to spot
Mm-hmm.
this guy can just easily just charge forward and just push the line forward because now like yeah you're just going to be able to get some damage on the target and you don't have to worry about necessarily losing this guy so it just gives you a completely different play style compared to almost every other HE vehicles in the game. We're talking about the mortars for the British that can't move, right? We're talking about the Stuka that doesn't want to be anywhere near the front,
Mm-hmm.
and the Su-76 we'll get to with the Soviets next. They're very frail, but they're very insane bang for the buck for the HE single target damage. They don't have the option for splash, as we'll get to that later. But here, like you said, this unit is so each faction now with the splash change, each faction core has some option for splash. So this is Wehrmacht, and it really has that cool niche. Yeah, it starts only at 2, but it now has an option. Do I get 3 or do I do 2 HE splash?
Mm-hmm.
So it just gives you that option. Hey, are they clumping up? Do I want to really get them to split apart? Are they really just hovering around an objective? Especially with that range, you can really just get out there. Even your first round, like you're saying, whenever you get this guy out, it's going to be at least mid game, right?
Yep.
So at that point, you really need something that's going to be high impact. So you really get the choice there. Again, you can kind of just mindlessly send them forward. So it kind of gives you advantage in a lot of ways because you can spend the CP on this guy often very early in a round.
Mm-hmm.
You can make your important decisions that you need to later on. This guy, normally HE, you kind of got to be very careful with a lot of these frail vehicles because you don't want to lose them. Where this, you're not losing them. Like very rare chance. So it just gives you a different play style that you might not see at first glance that you can kind of just usually, oh, I only can move 2 anyway. Boop, boop, done. And then he's there, and then now the opponent's got to respond. So then
Mm-hmm.
now you get to respond to how they're forced to respond, and that's really how you take advantage of this unit. So it might not be the most scariest unit by itself, especially for its cost and
Mm-hmm.
investment, right? But at the end of the day, its role is just it's just so blatantly obvious that other things just can't do this in the game.
Yeah.
So
And this is crazy because this is actually one of the few tanks that can go toe to toe for any anti-tank gun. They're gonna both have
yeah.
4 range. As long as you have
Hmm.
sight, if you're an anti-tank gun, you're pretty much gonna get wiped because the range is the same. Not only that, but if you have 3 HE, it's still a threat to heavy like to any kind of red health tanks.
Hmm.
That's still a
Certainly, yeah, it
threat
can help.
because they're not getting the frontal they're not getting the frontal AP dice rolls, so they're just rolling defense dice against this.
Right.
And with this one extra shield, it's just a meat. It's like a big meat shield. It's crazy. Now let me show you something that people keep forgetting about. Look at this combo here. I just want to show you these 2 units here. Look at this. Yes, look at this 2 combo here. You know what I mean? Look at this combo here. Oh, it's gorgeous. I mean, that for me is what I will love seeing. Both of them have defenses, high health, great defense, great tank hunter, great just obliterate everything else. You spot it in, this thing comes to the back, dropping 3 HE on any unit. Come on, baby. Like, do we need anything else? Look at this beautiful synergy here.
Do you need a commander? No, you
No,
don't.
you don't.
But you still can get them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nuts. I mean, I hope people. I mean, maybe. I mean, I do see why people would be hesitant because of the 5 fuel, but
Exactly.
do
Well,
you
that's
need
exactly
that
right.
with
That's
this?
exactly the point is that it's the cost, right? Like you're saying like, oh, that's an insane combo, right? But you're talking 7 manpower and 5 fuel. You have to obviously also it's tier 3 to get the Sturmpanzer. So
Hmm.
I mean, it is what it is, right? Like you can't that's a late game combo that you're looking at to win out the game.
Yep.
Wehrmacht is a little bit more flexible in capturing points at that the Panzer Grenadier is kind of really good, especially with the defense die to assault. It's got the health, got the extra defense die over a lot of other units. Where, yeah, it just gives you that other play style where if you play around it and you plan on getting this guy out, you can really kind of get all the pieces together. And that's really the strength of Wehrmacht. It's kind of just their teamwork and this unit for spotting for this unit, where a lot of units can't self spot. So you kind of just run into these situations where you know they're not as easy to play as perhaps US in terms of just bang for your buck firepower,
Mm-hmm.
but instead they have just bang for your buck health. And just I'm just throwing health numbers at you. How are you going to take this guy out? How are
Mm-hmm.
you going to dislodge me off of this side of the map? I'm going to outmove you with my light vehicles. My infantry are just going to be better than yours, and then my vehicles are going to solve any problem that you throw at me. So that's really what the Wehrmacht Corps is.
Yeah. And let's put this guy. Yeah. And if I'm correct, oh yes, I did notice something. So this HE shot, I want to make sure it's clear. This does not go over buildings. That's one thing I'm very interested you
Mm-hmm.
did that. It's not like a mortar team that has the over the top approach. Good thing I just
Mm-hmm.
noticed that because I was wondering.
Yep. Yeah, in second edition, that's something new. We've pointed out a couple times, but always good to point out things. But yeah, it doesn't have that indirect arc. So in second edition, it can't fire over buildings.
Right.
So you can use that when you're playing against it. If you're behind this building, it's not going to be able to target you directly. Sure, the splash
Mm-hmm.
could target here and then hit you, but that's only if they go the splash, right? So again, it
Correct.
kind of just keeps it in line. It just kind of shoots more of a straight arc. So that's kind of
Yeah. So you
both
might.
kind of historically accurate and also balancing.
Yeah. Imagine you buy it, you get the range upgrade. You're slow, 1, 2 here, and you have 4 range. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got this covered, this covered, this covered, and you still hit the guys in the bunker, and they can't hit your
Mhm.
back unless it's an anti-tank gun. How insane is that, Pete? And this is the first move out the door, two cubes.
Right.
You're just securing places. Man, love it. And now let's get to one of my more favorite section is the complete overhaul of the commander cards. Man, any surprises here? Let's see. Thank you for moving that out. We're gonna go from left to right like normal, and I'm gonna find the first edition quick while Ryan can start talking about the Stug Assault. Oh, this is a new one, isn't it? Stug Assault Doctrine.
Nope, that was in the Stug pack, so that was in that mini pack. It hasn't changed too much. The cool thing with this commander is really that target weak point. We're gonna see that coming in tier 4. It's just really that you only have so many Stugs, and that you don't really want 1,000 of them on the board anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't really need that many. So now it just kind of favors a little bit different style. It's a little bit blurry on my screen. The old tier 1 ability. If you just want to read that off to me.
Yeah, Stug Assault Doctrine. Tank the descent tactics. Non-weapon team infantry's gain 1 defense dice when adjacent to
Mhm.
the Stug. Tier
Yep.
2 was Stug comes out. Everything is the same except you reduce the manpower cost by 1, but it
Mhm.
requires a Tier 2 building. Tier 3 was the Stormtroopers, which is Stormtrooper spawn from any empty building and have close range firepower, which deals 1 AI damage at range 1.
Mhm.
And then the last one, Stug Brothers, 2 Stug tanks come out. I know in the first edition this was very popular because you could just bring out like pretty much 3 Stugs in not a long span.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of first when we're talking about this commander. One thing we have to highlight is that the firing arcs changed from first edition to second, because this is only 2 range and turretless. This unit just got majorly balanced and toned down, and
Yes.
you can't really emphasize that enough. So this unit, like you said, was just a monster because it was a full-fledged tank in a lot of ways that you can get much earlier than other tanks in the game, and because of that, it was just kind of too much too soon. It wasn't like too strong of a unit. It was just how soon you got it. By the time your opponent got like a T-34, you had 3 of these guys on the board, right?
Yep.
So it was just you're just swarming the board with these things because these things kind of could help answer any problem, and they were hard to take out. So yeah, so the couple things here is that tank descent tactics just didn't make any sense that early. Why does that ability make any you don't even have any tanks yet, right? So just tier 1, it just is gone, right?
Yep.
So that got moved to tier 3. Now one die wasn't really sufficient. Now it's clear that it doesn't stack with cover or anything, so it's just very clear
Yep.
what how it works, how to take advantage of it, and then you already have a Stug very likely by then. You don't have to, but yeah, you can also get one infantry spawns for free on that now. So you kind of get flexibility with whatever commander you have. Anything you have, any infantry you have available, you can unlock. So this is good for this. Also, one thing to note: this is a Wehrmacht and OKW commander. So this isn't that Stuke pack available to both those
Yep.
factions. So it also has been balanced in mind to be able to be worked with both of those factions. The key thing, no, yeah, that Sturm. Yeah, the stormtrooper there got moved to this one. We'll talk about in a little bit. So it got moved to the kind of the sister card, if you will, the Stug Assault and Stug Tactics.
Hmm.
So we'll talk about that later. But that ability is not gone. It's just moved. It's just to help give each commander a little bit more focus,
Yeah.
because the focus on this is really that Stug Assault. So getting that close range firepower now in the tier 1 slot, and then going with the Stugs, and then tank descent tactics. So again, just pushing, threatening like a fortified position, just charging forward. So you don't have to build sandbags or worry about
Hmm.
cover. You can just charge forward next to your tank and just push forward all together, combined arms. And then the target weak point was just really kind of icing on the cake. It just helps it from falling off late game. It still doesn't have great range, this version on this commander,
Hmm.
but getting that 3 AP is kind of that sweet spot for dirt cheap, where you start to be able to fight. You really want it to be able to fight those basically later vehicles and be able to stand a chance,
Yeah.
because that's kind of what it served. The role for the Wehrmacht army was really that defensive anti-tank role late in the war. It had the most knockouts, so that's really what it helps focus, and so it just gives you that, right?
Yeah. And what's very nice is, again, if this is the first time you're watching this, up here is another change that was on the cards. It's not in first edition. If you get past to tier 4, you can then exchange 2 experience points for any one resource. So I like that icon added there, which is very nice. Tank destroyer doctrine. This is an interesting one. I don't know if I'm use it very often, because I'm still getting accustomed to the assault, but it's definitely better than the first edition. I'll tell you that. Let's go to the tank destroyer doctrine, and I'll pull that card up. Ooh, very spicy. Tank destroyer doctrine in the first edition was marked vehicles. Visible vehicles lose all defense dice this round. A visible unit, you pay 3 munitions, any vehicle will lose all its defense dice of the round. It was actually used quite a bit in the first edition. Pack 43 emplacements. It's here in the original edition, first edition only had 3 range, and in the second edition has 4 range. But you did remove the munition cost for it. 1 munition cost for it. I'm sorry, fuel cost for it. Recon plane, which doesn't exist anymore. Instead, we have Jaeger snipers in a different slot. And then one of my very enjoyable tanks was the Jag Panther Calling. First edition to second edition, the big change was you did drop its health by 1.
And also
It's fuel by 2, yeah.
Yep.
But you get to spawn, both of them get to spawn 1 for free.
Yep.
So
breaking this down, yeah, that marking vehicles in first edition, it's still overloaded in that you may not realize when you first read it that it also removes the ability to block high explosive damage, and for light vehicles, anti-infantry damage, because it removes all defense dice. So it can turn your snipers, which you normally wouldn't think into tank destroyers, into kind of light vehicle destroyers. So it's kind of interesting how you can kind of combine these abilities now in second edition, in just a different little bit way. And then the fuel cost or the munitions cost came down, so it's just in a little bit different spot and how you want to use it, right? So now it can help against. It's especially good against light vehicles that are trying to capture, or if I need to focus down a heavy vehicle. This is one commander that could do it. So if you're worried about someone, if you just don't want someone to go vehicles, this kind of just has it all in one box.
right.
And then as icing on the cake, if you will, has the Jaeger sniper. So the Jaeger sniper just kind of helps you give that kind of mobile option alternative to the MG, right? The MG is great for locking down an area. We already touched on that, can get up to 3 AI. Where the Jaeger sniper has more health than the Soviet sniper out of the gate, like we'll talk about later. But it also has 2 AI also out of the gate. It can't get to 3 like the Soviet one can in terms of AI damage. But bang for the buck, this unit is just so good at just putting pressure, spotting, and then just able to just do things that Wehrmacht doesn't really have out of the gate. So it kind of fills a little gap for them.
Mm-hmm.
Where yeah, sure you can invest in a Grenadier and give it camo and all these things, but then you can only give it HE, so it's still not like that guaranteed to AI against infantry. But this is just again only one munition for it, so you're saving munition and you're just getting the 2 guaranteed AI, and you're getting camo, and obviously for 3 XP you get one for free. So then you can you can get one for free and then buy another one if you wish. But you kind of see as this commander is just you really probably want to start out with 3 Grenadiers with this commander, and a lot of that does come down to that pack 43.
Mm-hmm.
So
Uh-huh.
you kind of have
Uh-huh.
those Grenadiers, and you don't really worry about, you don't really get them again. You don't really necessarily get them their munition upgrades. I mean, you can, right? But again, you have that tank destroyer doctrine, that first ability to mark vehicles. You have the Jaeger sniper. You can use a little bit of your munitions there. And yeah, you can figure out where you want to spend the rest of your munitions. But able to just take advantage of Grenadiers and Panzer Grenadiers to make this pack 43 in the middle of the board, or just threatening aggression, just kind of charging across the board. That's really how this commander is really designed. It's just really a lot more aggressive play style. It might be hidden behind this tank destroyer name, but the fact that you can just take advantage of that pack 43, it's great on like a flank to stop vehicles to coming over to capture a spot, or where someone's just not going to really be able to put that 3 damage onto it, because 3 AP, 3 AP and it's gone, 3 HE it's very likely gone. It's just kind of that big bang for a low cost kind of
Yeah.
unit. Now you might say, oh, 4 manpower isn't that low, but again, it spawns next to your unit. Your Grenadier or Panzer Grenadier. It's just so easy to get out there with a lot of different builds. It also mentions Ostrupen, so if you get that Lost Brigade Ostrupen can actually be used with this commander to build it. That's why it's there. So we kind of had that forward thinking, if you will. That's why it's mentioned there. But yeah, this is kind of just very flexible. And then you had the Jagdpanther just to come in and clean house. And the key thing to note is, why the health and the cost change. It really is just to help differentiate, because again, Wehrmacht has a lot of tank destroyers in their kit. So they have that AP damage with the Elephant. So the Elephant has more health, has 4 AP instead of 3, and costs more resources. So it just kind of gives it a different place, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have both commanders, you can be like, well, oh, this map has a lot of fuel, or hey, maybe I do want 2 Jagdpanthers out, and maybe I could work with that. So it just gives you that option to help differentiate them, especially again when you get to that Lost Brigades, or if you have those 2 commanders in your hand at the same time. Just helps you pick one or the other, because they have a little bit different roles. Like this one's a little bit more mobile, but 5 is obviously more killable than I think the Elephant has 7, as we'll get to it later. And I could probably, it's actually the next one.
Yeah,
So yeah,
but this
we'll see
got
it.
that defense dice, which
Mhm.
is very nice. Yeah.
For sure. Yep, for sure. But one thing to note as you're kind of seeing this, the difference between 3 AP and 2 is huge, but somehow the difference between 4 AP and 3 is even bigger. So
Correct.
as you kind of get to these bigger numbers, we'll see here with the Elephant in a second. That guy is just insane.
Boom. There he is. There it is. Elephant.
Yep.
Let me find the first edition doctrine for this card. The Assault Support Doctrine.
Yeah, so the key thing here that we're going to see as he's pulling out the card is that first ability. I don't think it was even in the first slot. So one thing to note is that we really wanted to be able to be unlocked that first round. So if you get a Kubel wagon, you're able to actually take advantage of it right in that second round right away. So you unlock this ability, and then your Kubel wagon can go to a spot that's 3 away. Either you captured yet or you didn't. So you capture with the Kubel wagon, and you toggle no fire during the maneuver, and then you get the bonus resource. So you'll see this a little bit more. You'll see this on a Soviet commander as well. It's just a really fun ability where here as Wehrmacht, You really typically want to use it to get fuel to get to your tier 3, right? That's kind of the cool thing with this
Mm-hmm.
commander, where because you want that elephant out, you really want to have that AP because again, Wehrmacht's core doesn't have a TD out of tank destroyer. When I say TD, it's tank destroyer. Doesn't really have that in its core kit, where the elephant just gives it that in spades.
Yeah, and what's
So
great is the recon plane with the elephant. Now you're just drop that bad boy in front and let the elephant sit a little bit behind, just cover ground there. Crazy.
yep. So that exactly what you said. That recon plane just gives this commander that ability to spot something where you don't have to send a unit forward. Hey, I can't spot that emplacement, or hey, I'm not going to be able to spot that tank. You know that tank where it's going a lot of the time, but you don't want to sacrifice the unit to go spot it. So this commander really is, in a lot of ways, just a different style than that tank destroyer, right? Because in that one, you're looking to move the sniper forward. This one, you're kind of looking to use the recon plane, just a little bit different style. You're going to look to use Kuba wagons early game. So you just see the different core units as you're playing, and they just have different styles.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, hey, if there's a lot of spots where I can take advantage of that Kuba wagon, yeah, that's just a fantastic unit. Where this, getting that sniper with the other one just kind of opens up a different play style.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And getting Kuba Wagon with the 2 speed dice and being able to use that to actually lock down more resources. If you just take Kuba Wagon, park it on a munition point, pretty much because of that, you can pretty much send a recon plane out for free every round, just because that alone. It's like a free recon plane.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that flexibility as well with the Kuba wagon. So you buy one the end of first round, and then you get another one for free later on, and then you can buy them for munitions. So if you want to kind of get units on the board, but save your manpower, save your fuel for other things, right? Because it normally costs 2 manpower and 1 fuel. So instead, you
Mm-hmm.
could spend the munitions just to get more units on the board to help get them out. Again, if you get the speed die with them, the extra speed die, it just gives you just a lot of mobility, a lot of versatility with spotting, and then the elephant as the clincher at the end. So you
Yeah.
can kind of just build your Kubel army, if you will, get extra manpower and fuel where you wouldn't elsewhere. So just kind of extra units on the board that really help out.
Yeah, and in the second edition, first edition, the Kuba Wagon used to cost 4 munitions, and he actually, in second edition, is dropped down to 3, 1 munition less.
Hmm.
Very nice. This elephant tank, man, I love seeing it. We actually, in second edition, we see it more often than ever before. So it's really nice to see it being really used to its potential. And one of the
Yep.
biggest reasons, obviously, is the 2 reduction in just the fuel cost. Next, Elite Troop Doctrine.
So a new one.
This is a brand new one?
Yep, so you don't have to worry about first edition here. This is that stretch goal in the core, new 6th commander. So if you just get a core box, you'll see this guy. So this one really just helps. There wasn't really a Panzer Grenadier focused commander for Wehrmacht. So this is really just helps just that true, full, all the way top to bottom infantry firepower commander, which again just wasn't there. So it just is insane. If you look for the bang for the buck in this guy, it's just able to starting out with the LMG 42. When they get their HE munitions upgrade, it gives them that range, so it kind of turns the Grenadiers into a bit more of that support damage unit, because then you could also get camo with it still, right? So it kind of gives you that kind of half of what Slava was looking for, right? That sight
Mm-hmm.
and range that was kind of cool in first edition. It gives you that range, so now it can kind of be that support damage unit role, if you will. So it just kind of, and it gives you for free for 1 XP. So you just kind of, you just grab it, you buy your munitions upgrade, and then now your Grenadier, especially one that's just spawning on the line, just kind of cool to take advantage of. Next, we have the Stormtroopers. This one you don't get for free, but you can always, it's always great to have in your back pocket if there's an opportunity to use a Stormtrooper to go put forward pressure on your opponent. And you can use the Stormtroopers to spot for your Grenadiers, right? Your Grenadiers now have 3 range. Your Stormtroopers can spawn forward, and they're just great to threaten the enemy. Capture points deep behind enemy lines, just adjacent to any empty standard building. So not a
Yeah.
cathedral, not a bunker, but it's just great at that. People, they're just always strong
Yeah, and what
where
people don't
they're at.
realize is it's a great late when you're like mid to late game and you're like, I need to get a unit out there, but I have no option. Boom. If it's next to adjacent building, you just
Mhm.
drop one of those guys out. They're slow, but they're there. And you can always
Right.
just put them in the building on that maneuver phase turn. So if you want to just like,
Right.
put them in the building for the round.
Right. They don't have a wrench or anything, so they don't really have any defenses or defense die. But oh yeah, well obviously they spawn next to a building, so there you go. And then moving on to the G43 rifles, as you can start to see, wow, like the options really open up with this upgrade. Do you put it on a Grenadier? Do you put it on a Stormtrooper? Do you put it on a Panzer Grenadier? So it just really, they finally get their spawn for free. They get it with this upgrade. So now you could have that Grenadier with 2 AI and an HE and have 3 range. Just something you don't ever see in the game. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
never see a Grenadier with that kind of anti infantry firepower. It's one thing Wehrmacht lacks, right? So it just gives them that cool option to play just a completely different play style where you can rely a lot more on your Grenadiers for damage.
Mm-hmm.
So it just is kind of that cool. And then you could also throw it on your Stormtrooper. So now it's got 2 AI and a close range firepower. So, and then, you know, if you really want to soup up your Panzer Grenadiers, just look at tier 4. You get the veteran Panzer Grenadiers,
Exactly.
and now you can give it the AI as well, so you don't have to waste munitions on those AP upgrades because now they just gain them. So even if you already had a Panzer Grenadier out, just gains those APs. You don't want to grab those. Basically, you don't want to pay for those APs unless you desperately need them earlier, because now you get them for free. Yeah, you can just buy that G43 rifle. So now you have 2 AI and 3 AP. This guy's like he's a monster tank at that point,
Pretty
right? I
much.
mean, he's
Yeah. With the 3
2
range.
AI, 3 AP can do whatever at 3 range. This guy, like, if you're having trouble using this commander, the opponent must have like be spamming machine guns on you or something to stop this madness, because this is just madness.
It's a really good start. Yeah, it's a really good
Yeah.
play. And the thing is, like when you have like something like Elite Troop Doctrine Commander, you don't also, it's kind of strange, but a lot of times you don't want to get too narrow-minded focused. You want to
Hmm.
use all the advantages there because it is great. Like, hey, do I spend my time on Elite Grenadiers, I'm sorry, and give them the HEs? Because that is expensive cost. But now, you know, I mean, if you get them HEs, are you gonna make them visible if you're doing that? Well, if you focus on your Grenadiers, then you're not focusing on Panzer Grenadier. It's so nice. I like that balance. You gotta choose, you know, which way you go. Love this commander. Love, 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 love everything about this commander. I'm a big
Probably,
infantry player.
probably your favorite one.
Yeah,
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 I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
imagine.
For sure, for sure. Infantry Storm Doctrine. I'm thinking this one's also a new one.
Yep, this is the Lost Brigade. So this is using that new configurable half track. So this has got the one where you're gonna slot in that if you unlock that flame projectors in the 3rd tier there. So this one's a little bit different in that the Jaeger sniper it doesn't give you one for free, but it's only 1 XP, so you can get it at the end of round 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it just gives you a different opening because normally you can't get a sniper as Wehrmacht that early in the game. You can get that sniper out. You can spend your munitions elsewhere so you still get that AI damage. And then, you know, right there, front and center, you get the new half track. Cool thing about this is it could transport. It can spawn infantry adjacent. So I know Chris wanted there to be 2 infantry and 1 transport, but how are you going to show that on the board, right? I know that's really what he wanted. It's kind of his dream. But this really just simulates that because you could start one immediately in the transport, you move it out. You don't even necessarily have to pop it out because next round you can spawn another one adjacent. It's almost like it was carrying 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just how it plays out. And then it's again, that's just infantry forward spawn point. Yeah, I mean it's obviously not an offensive vehicle, but it's got reinforce, retreat, speed die, so it's got mobility. In a lot of ways, it's better than a major, arguably. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it can't spot or anything, and it doesn't really have firepower like the major can with the 2 HE. But it's more mobile. It could transport, so you
Yeah.
can put something inside of it. Just different, just versatile. And then yeah, I mean then you next get again that flame projectors. So if you're looking for more anti-infantry or anti-light vehicle, you got it. You really don't have any trouble in that department with this commander. If anything, you're gonna run to this commander is like vehicles, right? And then, oh, look at that. Oh, I get some anti-tank strafe. So again, Slava
Mm-hmm.
just loves these abilities. It's the anti-tank one. So again, against emplacements, or hey, I know where this vehicle is most likely gonna go. I can lay down the anti-tank strafe
Mm-hmm.
and cover that most likely path that they're gonna move their vehicle that they just spawned on the board. So it just kind of is that well-rounded, gives you that option there of just really great against infantry, and you know flame is great, you know, dealing with cover and buildings.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just that monster in that department.
And can you just clarify for me? I know for the British, the universal carrier, if it got the flame upgrades, it was no longer able to transport
This
or.
one can.
Okay, I just want to have that cleared up. It can still
Yeah.
do everything with the 2 flame.
Yeah, we early on we had it that it couldn't, but it just kind of ruined the upgrade, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
This unit isn't that impressive at face value, especially by the time you get it in the game. It's already mid to late game, so we didn't really want to restrict it. By the time it comes out, it's you kind of have to know what you're doing to use this one properly. Again, that's kind of the notion on a lot of the expansions and the core factions. We just talked on that elite troop doctrine. That one's great. It's easy to use. This one is this 251 is insanely powerful, but you have to know how to use it.
Mhm.
Game, I see you trying to use this sometimes. I see other players, and you have to figure. You got to put all the pieces together. Where am I going with this guy? You have to plan out 2 rounds ahead. Where am I getting this 251? You really want to save your manpower because you want to get
Mhm.
this guy out,
Yep.
then spend your manpower to get that guy out in the front line. That infantry unit, you get that Panzer Grenadier out in the front line, or that Grenadier, or that MG, right? So you
Yep.
can kind of get those options. Or this now that this one can get the sniper out there. And a sniper can be great at capturing because it already has camouflage. So again, it's like all these little layers out there where you really want to take advantage of that 251. And its stats offensively aren't flashy. It's really just that ultimate support vehicle.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very nice. Love it. It's a mobile, pretty much, mobile forward emplacement in many ways. I like it. I really do.
Exactly.
Man. And just want to show you guys, look how many commanders there are. I mean, just going through the, was it 1, 2, 3, or 5 commanders, the different play styles, and it just keeps going. It just keeps going. And the amount of time and energy spent to just balance or find the character behind each commander is insane. Stoop tactic. You want to
Yep.
get that bad boy going? I'll bring it out.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more, I would say it could be a little bit more clear and maybe a little bit easier to use than that Stug Assault. Again, this kind of flopped with the Stug Assault in that this one gave up the close range firepower to gain the Stormtrooper. So that flopped between the 2 commanders because that the Stormtrooper just works a lot better in this one. So essentially what the Stormtrooper does is you spawn that forward and then you have the Stugs come up, and then late game they get the extra sight and range.
Mm-hmm.
So combine this commander is just a little bit more anti-infantry focused in the late game, where the other one's anti-infantry focused more in the very, very early game,
Mm-hmm.
and then switches to AP, where this one doesn't fully switch to AP, kind of is a little bit more universal, a little bit easier to range, again, easier to use because of that sight and range.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more flexible, but it doesn't really have that flash if you're looking for, hey, how is this guy gonna hold up against those heavier tanks of my
Correct.
opponent? Well, not that well. Like the Stugs are a little bit more flexible, but then they lose that, they don't have target weak point from the other one.
Yep.
So you can kind of see, like, if you draw both of these, there actually is a lot of analysis because they play a bit different. The other one is a little bit more, again, focuses on that assault mechanism in the game, focuses on the tank descent tactics, where this one is a little bit more flexible in different ways that you kind of use the stormtroopers. The Stugs are a little bit more, you keep the Stugs back because they can be back further. They get more anti-infantry and they get that more sight and range. So they're not charging forward. The Stug Assault is just more that aggressive one, where this one's a little bit more let me hold back. Let me surprise you with a stormtrooper. So this one's just a little bit different play style there.
Yeah, and once again, also for OKW and for Wehrmacht. So both of these go that direction. Very, very nice. Faustin armor doctrine. Let me go find that.
Face stung armor doctrine. Yeah, this one's cool. As you're grabbing this one, you're gonna see this is actually the introduction of Ostrupen. And this isn't the core, so like they weren't in core at all. They were a completely new unit. And this just helps give a different play style. Again, just completely different. So in the video game, Company Heroes 2, you get 6 of these guys out. Well, guess what? You get 6 of them out here. It may say 3, but whenever you buy one, you get 2. This is the most cost efficient unit in the game. And then, skipping MG bunker. We'll get to that in a second, because the Ostrupen just really bring this commander to life. So it's going back now to the MG bunker. Yeah, Grenadiers, Ostruppen, and Panzer Grenadiers can construct a bunker for 2 munitions. So this kind of just really leans into, again, you probably don't want to open up if you draw this commander. You don't want to probably start with an MG. Instead, you probably want to start with 3 Grenadiers. You're looking for your Grenadiers to just charge across the board, and then you're looking to get basically they can build an MG bunker if you need, and then maybe so by the time you're looking to get the Ostruppen, you might want to get 2 Kubelwagons because then you get 2 Ostruppen, so you can put an Ostruppen boom in each Kubelwagen, and now you're just again you can able to just keep up the aggression, and you're just kind of overwhelm your opponent with numbers and just aggression, and then you have the Pack 43 to kind of keep up that forward aggression because you can build those forward, and then just the icing again on the cake, and this one just the Tiger. So the Tiger here just coming in and just doing what he does best, and that's just blow stuff up. So you just get that nice, well-rounded. There's really not a way to go wrong with this one. I think the only way to go wrong when you're playing this commander is it's a little bit difficult to use Ostruppen. So I kind of would just tell someone not to make too many of those because you have to move them across the board. That's their weakness. Where am I getting all this CP to move them across the board? But on the counter side, don't retreat your units. Just they have heroic sacrifice. If they die, they don't give a victory point. Just charge these guys forward, throw them on points, contest points, make your opponent react. That's what these guys shine at. So you really want to kind of use them again, kind of with Kubelwagons. You want to hop them out of Kubelwagons. You just want to charge them on points. You want to go onto the point. You want to build sandbags because these guys have a wrench. So again, they can build sandbags. They can build an MG bunker. They can build a Pack 43. So it's just really putting these pieces together
that's amazing.
It may sound easy, but to put this together, I mean, you can have this commander can really have a masterpiece game, but where you just have all the pieces fall in place. But you really got to learn how to use the Ostruppen. So that's kind of the difficulty with this commander. But once you figure out how to do it, this guy just truly shines.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's awesome, man. Panzer Corp doctrine. Look at that. It's actually the next one I had. Oh no, it's the mechanized doctrine. Panzer Corp.
So this one didn't change. This one actually probably changed the least overall. Pretty much from first edition. This might be the commander that just really almost is copy and paste, or just like ship it, whatever you want to call it. But as you're finding it, yeah, Panzer Corp. The key thing there is we really wanted to. I'm not sure the XP cost in the first edition there, but I mean it's very much the same. So I think was it 2 in the first edition?
1, 2, 2, 2. So it's 1,
one
2,
there.
2, 2.
Sure. So I mean, it plays a little bit different, but you don't. There's really no reason to get the first unlock at the end of round 1, unless you could somehow afford tier 3 at the end of round 1, and also afford a tank, right? Because there's no reason to unlock tier 3 at that point. So it's been reworked to just give you a free Kubelwagen while also giving you that kind of right away to rush tier 3. So that's kind of where this shines. And then the smoke canisters work for all vehicles. I don't know if I can't read the old one.
Heavy vehicles for the smoke. It's called Panzer Tactics back then.
Yep. So it used to be just for heavy. So now you got a free Kubelwagen. Now once you're familiar with smoke and get used to how it works, now you can smoke. Right. So again, if you haven't read the rulebook on smoke, that's like a 5 to 10 minute discussion on how smoke works, but it's just a really cool ability that once you learn how to use, just very powerful in certain situations. Yep. So moving on to armor blitzkrieg, this is just kind of the linchpin, right? This is a heavy vehicle commander. It gives you a free Kubel. It gives you a Sturmpanzer. This is just obviously letting you use them all. All at, you just mass vehicles, march them across the board. So this one, again, is pretty straightforward, right? Sturmpanzers no longer have slow. So out of the gate, they have slow, but now they're a lot more mobile. And ones you have already made no longer have slow as well, and then you get one for free. So this one, you probably want to maybe get 2 Sturmpanzers because you don't have slow. And yeah, I mean, you just get that flexibility. Do you go Kubels? Do you go a 2-2-2? Do you go a Panzer IV? I mean, it just gives you so many options because you're going to get this out. This is like one of the commanders in the game where you just get tier 3 faster than other people. Yep. Especially for Wehrmacht, where their vehicles are way more expensive. So this is a great commander to rush that Flakpanzer. If you want to rush it, this commander is like the best commander in the
Right.
game for Wehrmacht to do it with. So
Yeah. But and then one thing is I noticed I think I actually seen this being played recently. Just because you have this commander, don't forget about your infantry. Yes, I understand, but infantry is the ones that capture points. Next,
yep, I mean, yeah, you do get that one Kubel, but yeah, infantry are what win games.
what win
So
games, and that's something you will learn more and more and more as you play. Infantry win games. Terror doctrine. Oh,
yeah. So this one here, it hasn't really changed too much. Yeah, it lost. What was it? War speed.
yeah, that
So it
was war
lost
speed.
war
Yep, heavy
speed,
vehicles
but
may
now
pay 2 missions to gain 1 speed die this round.
yep, but now it has breakthrough tactics, which is pretty close to it. It's a little bit more defined as where it gets used, but then also to start out now, this one has I didn't really the terror doctrine abilities were just harder to use in general. I don't remember the old one there,
At the end
but
of
it
the
was
damage
just
phase, any enemy infantry that took damage this round make morale roll, retreating 2 hexes on a red result.
yeah. I mean, it just sounds so niche, and it was too niche. It's just something that it just doesn't really work in the board game. It was just a cool concept that just didn't really translate well. Question for the audience: will the Pack 43 shoot through buildings? No, it doesn't. It just follows the normal rules. We don't really, when you have a core rule set, you don't typically want things that just break it so easily. So it's just something that we just want to keep in mind. Instead, it's just kind of got that nice 3 AP out of the gate for a good bang for the buck price.
It's a
So
good question.
just
That's a good
something to keep
question.
in mind. But yeah, it's a great question. Again, we try to replicate the video game where we can, but you know, also we want to keep things teachable for new players, especially those who haven't played the game, the video game. So Terror Doctrine here, yeah, going out starting again. It gets that LMG right out of the gate. Um, so yeah, you can get 1 Grenadier spawns for free, and then yeah, if you wait to get your HE upgrade, then you can grab also the
Free
range with
range.
it. So
Wow.
yeah, it just gives you that free range. It kind of just gives you that option and gives you more Grenadiers. So you don't necessarily have to start with Grenadiers with this one because you're going to get one for free. You could start with, two. This might be the best commander to start with 2 MGs because you're going to get a Grenadier. You probably want to spawn it near a Kubel wagon when you get one,
Mm-hmm.
or you can wait. I mean, you still get just that Grenadier ready to go out of the gate whenever you're able to get it, and then obviously the vehicle focus, the another anti-tank strafe.
Mm-hmm.
So just that other option where this one's just going to be able to have answers for vehicles, and then the King Tiger there just to round it out. Just a nasty yeah, I mean, I don't want to say nearly unkillable. It's unkillable, folks. 8
Mm-hmm.
health, defense die. This guy's not dying, but he's coming out so late. He's 5 XP.
Right.
Can you get him in the right spot? There's really not too much flash about this commander, to be honest,
Correct.
before this point. So you're kind of just, how this commander plays is you're just looking for battles. You're just trying to get as much XP as possible. Just fight everywhere you can. So maybe don't get the 2 MGs, go 3 Grenadiers, get the
Mm-hmm.
4th Grenadier, charge across the board, target as many enemies as possible, get some vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, now you can use the breakthrough tactics on the King Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
You can use breakthrough tactics on, if you get a Flakpanzer. This one might be, I know the other one might be faster, but you might want to get the Flakpanzer here because then now you can just spend 2 munitions to move that Flakpanzer a
Mm-hmm.
5th spot. So it becomes almost like a 2-2-2.
Yep.
And then yeah, you can use that anti-tank strafe to kind of maybe hold off tanks or emplacements or something to help buy you time for the King Tiger. Because you probably don't want to go too much AP, right? You probably don't really want to go Panzer IV necessarily with this one, but you still can, right? Because you're gonna have options, everything, and then the King Tiger just gives you more options. So it's not like a terrible idea, but just comparing it, it's just you just get that flexibility if you
Yeah.
plan ahead, and you really just again want to really get that XP.
Yeah, I like commanders like this because it's not saying there's one great. It's not like focused on one specific, like a Stug Assault is. It's saying, hey, across the board, there's little changes to certain things that can pay off big time. And knowing that the Wehrmacht tanks are slow, this is great. And it's not, and all it's saying is you can use this per each tank. It's not, hey, it's
Exactly.
on the first cube you put in that vehicle. You can give a speed S for 2 munitions if you want to run it like that, which is awesome. It gives you that like blitzkrieg breakthrough type approach. Love this stuff. It's great. Fostraum support doctrine.
Yep.
I can't even say it right. Fostraum support doctrine.
Fostraum support doctrine. Yeah. So the cool thing here,
It's a new one.
This one is actually new. That tier 4 is new. It used to have the pack, the pack 43, but because we made the 251s configurable, and we're gonna be throwing a pack on one. Now this one focuses on that. So this is just a different take on that 251. It just really has a cool combination with the hold down as you're hovering over with your mouse, where so you can get the Ostrupen. So this is the last Ostrupen commander. Well, no, we actually have one more. So this is the second one that we see, and this one's just focused on. You can get them out early, right? You get them for 3 XP. That one definitely. This one you probably want to save up to have 2 Kubel wagons, perhaps, right? Or at least maybe have one where you're going to send on your weak side or something to you recapture a point, or to maybe go lay down some barbed wire. Just plan things out so you kind of support your lines. Again, they're great if you already lost troops, and then these guys you don't want to worry about losing them because they got heroic sacrifice, so they won't award victory points. And that 251 just combos with it. Hull down, you could then use hull down on the Ostrupen that you put next to the 251 to give the 251 2 defense dice. So kind of again make it like a forward emplacement basically. You can just immobilize it, basically give it the defense
it's even
side.
better than forward placement because you get the 2 defense dice from all attacks pretty much.
Yeah, but I mean it's a softer target as well. It's only a light vehicle, so yeah, I mean some ways it's a little bit softer because it only has 3 health as well. But then you get the pack 251 half track, so it really becomes in a lot of ways like their version of the Puma, right? So that we'll see that later for OKW. They get that kind of 1 AI, 2 AP option. It's a little bit late, of course, but there's usually vehicles out late. They're just if you already have these out on the board, you have extra munitions. Just why not slap it on and throw some extra damage on those tanks. And you're just looking to trade units at that point and capture victory points, right? You have your Ostrupen to capture, you have your 251s to support. So I think that just really rounds out this commander. A little bit different play style than the pack 43s. Obviously, with that late pack 251, because that's a little bit more mobile. The Ostrupen don't have to build it. Wherever your 251 just ends up, you can kind of plan accordingly. You're just a little bit more mobile there in the late game. But you just got to plan things out. Again, the Ostrupen are a little bit more challenging to play.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And that hold down is also kind of tricky to use too. You got to really plan out how you're going to use it. It is only 1 CP, but you really got to plan it.
And just a quick question for the hold down. It says vehicle 2 defense dice until vehicle moves. Will this be 2 defense dice like defense dice on like an infantry unit, where it like one of these defense dice you just roll it every single time?
Yep. It's basically as if it exactly like it's got like 2 blue defense dice, or as if it's benefiting from cover. Vehicles don't benefit from cover. This is the one exception in the entire game to that. Hold down gives it in a different format where it can get 2, but it's immobilized and it requires a Grenadier, Ostrupen, or Panzer Grenadier to basically put it in that hold down mode.
And then another question, just to clear up. If let's say we have the Sturmpanzer, is that what it's called? Yeah.
Sure thing. Yep.
If he rotates, is that considered a move? Let's say he does.
Nope.
So
nope. It's if they. It's when they leave the hex.
Okay. Wonderful, man. I love this guy a lot. Imagine this thing here with the 2x3 defense dice just from the get-go. You're not dying. You're never gonna die.
Yep, and then you can just rebuild it each round.
Yep.
Yeah, so it says that late war defensive hold down style that Wehrmacht used. So moving on to mechanized doctrine. This is where, hey, look, their infantry don't have speed dice out of the gate, and now they do. So that's kind of where this one shines. Again, at the end of round 1, it's only 1 XP, so you can unlock it. Not sure if you're able to grab. Yep, you're working on it. Grabbing the old one.
Yep.
The old one, I'm not sure what the tier 1 was off the top of my
Cool
head.
wagon can spend 1 munition to repair an adjacent vehicle, 2 health.
Yeah, I mean that one was just a little bit. So the first edition was a little bit more solely vehicle focused, where obviously, and then you got the 222s at the end. So it's just so many 222 models, right? So again, it's just too many, right? Do you really want three? So just how the redesign was is really just focus on that combined arms, if you will, of the mechanized infantry with the 222s is really how this one shines. It just really is a great early to mid game commander, giving Wehrmacht their infantry mobility, which they don't have. It's just a very powerful, cheap, inefficient option, and they still can get their other upgrades. So just kind of that flexibility. Then the 222s gain their AI damage and can still get their defense die upgrade. So you can really just soup up your 222s
Mm-hmm.
in just a cool way. And then smoke canisters work with, obviously they're just great on Kubel wagons to capture. They're great on 222s because you can dive your 222 across the board right next to an enemy, smoke canister it. So a lot of their focus fire on the 222 isn't going to be able to see it because of how smoke works. Again,
Mm-hmm.
look it up in the rules. It's got some cool examples. And then just a little bit of finisher, just a 222 and a Panzer Grenadier. So just a very rare double spawn. There isn't too many in the game, but it just kind of gives you a reason to get this commander, finish it, and then just get those extra units on the board, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, I do see this commander used a bit. I really do. With the speed dice, which is great, given that mobility, and then also with mid to late game, bringing in another infantry unit and also 222 as backup. It's super interesting. So, very nice commander. Bump GD
Yeah.
bump GD Jaeger infantry doctor. Oh.
So this one, yep. I mean, this one obviously had to be updated visually to represent the new upgrade that it got this week. So yeah, now the Ostwinds, because they get the double sight and spots camo, that's one thing to note as we'll touch on later. But this one is, if you love camo, just like Slava does,
Mm-hmm.
this just kind of gives you that nice option out of the gate. Yeah, so Grenadiers obviously don't need to buy both, right? There's no reason to ever buy both camo upgrades, but it just gives you a different option because you're going to spend 3 here and then you get it here. So instead of spending 2 on a Grenadier early, you get this commander, spend 3 instead of 2, and then you get a whole new extra Grenadier with camo. And
Mm-hmm.
or you can get an MG42 with camo, and then you can also buy it for any infantry. So your Panzer Grenadiers, oh, you want to make them camo? You can
Yep.
make them camo. So this just gives you cool little style here. And then yeah, just cool flexibility. The Nebelwerfer light barrage. So just again, just kind of a light little, very cheap, inexpensive. If you know a unit's going to dive on something, just a little area denial.
This
Then
is
we see,
great.
yep, and then we see another hull down. So just another option where again you have these camouflaged infantry building sandbags around your vehicles. You move a Kubel wagon onto a point. Oh, it's probably gonna get attacked and wiped out. Well, let me just give it hull down. Let me give
Mm-hmm.
it some defense dice. Same thing you do 2G2, or obviously your veteran Ostwinds. So if you want to get some veteran Ostwinds out, that just helps, this is just a camo, anti-camo, awesome commander.
Yeah.
Just if you really like that kind of camo mechanism and you really hate it as well. You love using it, but hate running into it. This is the commander
Yep.
that you may be looking out for.
And just to be clear, for hold down, you can also hold down ally tanks and vehicles as well. It's not just specifically to yours.
Yep, it doesn't specify. So anything, yep, that's kind of a good, if you in team games, if you want to do that, you have the option to do that.
And this might seem weird, but this is a really good one to go with when you're playing against British. You don't really notice this light barrage thing, but if every round for one munition you're able to drop an HE shot on like forward emplacement or even on like a um hold oh or even on like a
Shoot.
mortar thing, even if it's camouflage, it still will take the 1 HE damage. So you can actually in 3 rounds possibly destroy emplacements that the British are putting down. It's super interesting. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, those abilities in general are just great against either again area denial of spots where you just know the enemy's going to go on, or again emplacements they can't move. So those abilities are
And
just
even better,
fantastic.
look at this map. You can use it to destroy this building here that's got the resources on the enemy side, while you on your side have yours covered. That's so interesting. It's really neat play styles there.
Yeah, on that note, we're actually going to be testing a little bit different change. We're actually looking to make these destroyed buildings actually enterable with infantry. So that's going to be a late thing that we're going to be testing to help open up maps a little bit. So they'll have only one defense die, but for the purpose of being protected against MGs, they won't be pinned. So just kind of open the maps up and kind of just make those terrain pack 2s a little bit more cooler to have, because infantry trays can fit in under these. So you
Mm-hmm.
can just, you can just either do it one or the other first, and then you can always just remove this to easily move your guy. So it's just something more thematic, because rubble was heavily used in the war. We had a lot of feedback like, why can't my infantry, go in the rubble basically. So
Yeah.
again, if the building's destroyed, your infantry is going to get kicked out. These resource spots can still be in play. For this scenario, before the ruling was they'd be knocked out and then no one would be able to capture them again. But because you're going to be putting one of these there, infantry will be able to enter it here just like that, and then they'll be able to go in and just go in and get it still. So it just gives you that option. So just something I just want to touch on if you're watching the video,
Interesting.
and
You guys are
that's something
seeing
we're going to be testing.
sneak peeks. You guys are catching all the sneak peeks.
Sneak peeks, just some final. We just want to get these final things in, see if they work, see if they're cool, and it just gives us more options with just cool little fun things. So swinging back to the spearhead doctrine, this was a cool little update from first edition. Yeah, so they can gain one sight now. They gain 2 in spot camo again. Before that change to the Ostwind, this was their only commander entirely across the whole faction, all different commanders, all different expansions. This is the only one that could spot camo. This is still a cool one, because you're not going to want to go Ostwinds every game. We're very, very likely, you're going to very likely see this on a 2-2-2, as I think Slava saw in his 2v2 game.
You can actually see that against the British.
Right, so it's just a really cool option to go. Then obviously, once you have that recon enforced on either a Kubel or 222, then obviously, where's your support? Well, now you get your incendiary mortars.
Mm-hmm.
So now their XP upgrade goes from 2 down to 1, and then you just get a mortar for free. So then you can just spend one more XP and give it flame. So it just really works out well for their mortar teams. And then again, another ability Slava loves, fragmentation bomb.
Oh, it was used against me multiple times in that British in the game.
Yep. So again, it just kind of focuses on that kind of long range damage support against emplacements. Like British was, he was playing British in that game. And then to finish it off, you get the Tiger. So that Tiger, again, it's because this commander isn't too flashy. Just a nice Tiger at the end makes it a solid commander no matter what. Always great to have a Tiger on the battlefield.
It isn't too flashy. This is a very flashy commander. I love this commander. This is great. Nothing is not focused on any single one thing, but it provides in every 4 different roles something of benefit. With you know what I mean, of sight, with support, with area control, and then also with just like area like you put a tire tank in. It's like, what do you call it? It's just like, dude, mitigation. Like, nobody's going to that Tiger. You're not gonna fight a Tiger one-on-one.
So there was actually a good question on the Discord earlier today. When would someone pick a commander first? These flexible commanders just augment your core units. Like, your core units really are designed to handle any situation. You throw on a flexible commander like this, and this is just a great commander to go first, because spotting, just the 2+2 sight is always good. Especially with Wehrmacht, because so many units have longer range than their own sight. So just having a great spotter unit, 222 is just a great unit to throw it on, or the Kubel.
Watch the British game. My snipers were pretty much running around trying to not be spotted by the 222 because the mortar was in the background ready to drop a bomb on my sniper.
So it can kind of be a preemptive counter pick. So even if it's pick first, then you're like, oh man, I wanted to go snipers. Now I don't know if I want to. And again, you get it really early. So this is something that, some commanders are better at this, but sometimes you want to double down on a role, and that could be great too to open. But just something to keep in mind that, sometimes there's just safe picks where, it doesn't, like, I don't know where you're going to go yet out of your commanders, so let me just go this one. It's well-rounded. It's going to be great into a lot of different things, and that's just what it excels at.
Love it.
So the last one here, the last new Lost Brigades commander, it's just another well-rounded one. This is the last Tiger one. So there's not too many Tigers. There's only 3. And this is it. This is again just that last new one in the Lost Brigades. You get the Ostrupen. You can get them round one. At the end of round one, you
Crazy.
buy this. You buy a Kugelwagen, right? And then now you just hop one in the Kugelwagen. You have the other one to just march forward. Just a great, very inexpensive combination at the end of round one. Tactical movement. This just really works again because you're going to have the Ostrupen most likely spawning from the spawn line. This lets you move them all with a tactical movement. The 251, at that point, hey, look, do I still want to spawn Ostrupen? Oh, yes, I do, because now I can spawn them further forward, or I can at least spawn one in a 251 at the spawn. And then, of course, you get the Tiger to round it out. So it's a little bit more rounded, again, because it's got that Tiger at the end. It gives you that mobility, those Ostrupen. Again, you don't want to, just because you can get Ostrupen very early, you don't want to just keep spamming them out, because how are you going to move them all? Yeah, tactical movement's going to give you some ability to help out with that.
But long
But
term, you got to be careful with that 3 munition.
right, you're gonna be lacking damage. How are you gonna secure kills? How if your opponent's stopping you because you can't move all your guys out of your spawn, you're really not gonna get too much benefit out of that one.
That's
So it's
right.
just something to keep in mind.
Because you need that munitions, remember, if you really some things to look into. Yeah. I love it. And then the Tiger tank and the 251 half track, again, we see that. This is great.
So this one doesn't get any of the configuration options, but it's just great to have it late game. You could spawn something in it to move forward to capture a point and then still spawn infantry adjacent to it. So it just gives you that flexibility, just a kind of early infantry focus, support your infantry, and then get the Tiger in to help you with any, vehicles you run into or any trouble of that sort. So it just kind of gives you that nice, well-rounded, a little bit more rounded than the other ones. The other ones are a little bit more specialty out of the Lost Brigades, where this one is a little bit more well-rounded, and then you get the nice little Tiger to just kind of make it easy going into your end game versus vehicles.
And that's it. I mean, that's it, but like that's a lot of it, and watch the game if you want to see the Wehrmacht player play. He played pretty well against the British. I mean, that's a 2v2 where there's double British versus the OKW Wehrmacht. You'll actually see this the spearhead doctrine at play used really nicely. I really like the way he was using it. He was able to put down damage on 2 emplacements at the same time and threaten points. But yeah, this is the Wehrmacht. It's a really in-depth overview. I'll clip all the clips together. I do want to apologize by some technical difficulties. Don't know what it was, but I'm happy we actually got it resolved for that overview of Tier 3 and the commanders. Any more comments, Brian, before we let the people enjoy the rest of the day off?
Nope. I mean, that's pretty much it. Just that their infantry are just strong and versatile, but, lack mobility, and all their units are just really that kind of versatile role in a lot of different ways. They do have the specialty Flakpanzer, but as we kind of touched, the core is very flexible. That Sturmpanzer, as we talked about, can be used so many different ways. Do you go splash? Do you get that single target? It's nearly unkillable. So it's just, what do you want to focus on? I know the Panzer Grenadier is very appealing on paper, but you have to know what you're doing with it. Where is it going? You really want it at a critical spot of the map. You don't want to waste it if you go that one. You don't have to go it either. You can go MGs, get them in a building, then bring out some mortar. Like getting a mortar team and 222 at the end of round one can be a great combination as well, because the 222 can be a great spotter early game, and then the mortar team can lay down the hurt. So it just gives you so many different play styles. Obviously, the Kugelwagen, everyone loves the new second edition Kugelwagen. It just it's just such a flexible faction. That's why it's easy with the US. You can't go wrong. It's just a blast. There's no bad units anymore in second edition. So just have fun, folks. And if you're losing, play more Wehrmacht.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for dealing with technicalities, and hopefully this really helps you understand Wehrmacht more and which factions you do want to purchase, especially if you're gonna do like if you're going up like 4, 5, 6 different factions, how you want to break it up.
Yeah, just that last little note. Yeah, so usually at that player count, I would recommend just 2 Wehrmachts. If you're gonna get 2 access factions, you know what I mean. That third, sorry. So you're gonna get 1 Wehrmacht, 1 OKW. Get another Wehrmacht. It's just because OKW is a little bit harder to play. So a lot of times at that player count, you're gonna have someone new at the table. You're gonna have multiple people new at the table. This faction is it's just a lot. You know, give to someone who's barely played the game, and now they're gonna do pretty well now in second edition.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not too many traps with them. Figuring them out isn't too difficult, especially compared to OKW. So it's just a lot safer to hand them to someone new. So I just really recommend them. So you get them in the 2-player core, and then if you want to get a second one, especially if you're looking at like the 6-player all-in bundle, they're just a great pickup in that slot. It's really what I'd recommend again. So you can play especially if you have any historical interest in doing Axis versus Allies, right? It's
Which is
just
the only way we play up here in our area.
right. Just a lot of people prefer that way, but you can play any faction against any faction. Don't feel like it's forced. But it just is what it is, right? You know, a lot of the people are playing this game for that little historical note.
Yep.
So that's
Thanks
it,
for
man.
clearing that
Have a
up.
good night,
You
all.